We have a great program for you today, so thanks very much. I'm Deanna Palm with the Hillsboro Chamber. I want to thank Ashley Hill, who is the talent advisor for Arnell Recruiting Services, and also soon to be Hillsboro Chamber board member and current founder of the Black Advisory Business Council for the Hillsboro Chamber. Ashley, welcome and thank you very much for being a part of our Small Business Solutions Series workshops. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say, and I am at this point going to turn it over to you and let you run with it.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to come and bless you guys with a little information that I've just experienced, my personal experiences, along with some of the experiences that my candidates and my previous clients have been experiencing. Just in case you don't know, a talent advisor is someone who actually helps employers and employees engage incoming talent. So what we do is we make sure that we are hands-on and that we create a people-friendly environment for our candidates and our employers. So today's series is prioritizing culture to create change within your hiring practices. Forward, Deanna, please.
Oops, hang on. I'm getting there. There we go.
All right. So as we all know today, we live in the COVID world. COVID is to blame for everything, you know, and I don't think COVID's going away anytime soon. I just feel it in my gut that it's not going away. Forward, Deanna. COVID has definitely changed the way us talent acquisition advisors and recruiters have been recruiting. Primarily because now everything is virtual. I feel like we're living in virtual reality, honestly, and that people are really yearning for that personable touch. You know, we really are seeking an in-person experience. Forward, Deanna. Forward again. Another complication with COVID primarily is being inconvenient. I don't know about y'all, but I've been so inconvenient by COVID, from trying to find toilet paper to finding sanitizer, Clorox wipes, and just trying to keep it all together. Everything has just been inconvenient. I'm living in the land of inconveniency. And so right now we are understanding that most of our employers and employees, everyone is working from home. We're working with our spouses, our kids, we're teaching, we're doing so much, and time management is no longer the thing, because we can't seem to manage time like we used to, because we're so tied up virtual learning, being a teacher, a professor, and doing our work profession as well. So COVID is to blame for a lot of things. I don't know how you guys have been experiencing it, but has anyone been experiencing anything different through COVID? Yes, no, okay. Okay, Deanna, next. Uh-oh. All right. So what are some things we can learn from COVID, and how can we implement new hiring strategies for our business? Well, it's simple. We first take a deep breath, and then we learn to take it in what it is, and then we just find ways to adjust. Okay, let's move forward. Going through this time, like I said, having that time to learn, plan, and regroup is highly important. These are things I encourage everyone to do. And every time I have a conversation with one of my candidates, first thing I ask is, how are you? What have you learned? What are your plans? And how are you regrouping? And a lot of times they're like, wow, that's a lot to take in. I don't really know. And I'm like, give yourself some space to do so. You're allowed to process what's happening. It's a lot going on, from people being killed in the streets by, police, and COVID. We have vaccines. We have so many things that are against us currently. And we just haven't had the time to really process nor talk this thing out. So I tell people, go back to your passion and use your passion to drive your next move. Okay. Because just thinking about myself, You know, my art is my passion. I love what I do. I love recruiting, and I like to attract those who like to do the same. Next, Deanna. So this is a big one. And although you may Google what is culture, you'll see billions of definitions, and I don't understand it. But what is culture and why is it important? Well, according to Webster, culture is the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. Now, you may say, well, why is it so important? Well, we feel like it's important because we want to include everyone, but it will help minimize unconscious bias, reduce prejudice and racial tension, you know, and then also it will allow us to identify people by their nationality versus a skin color. That's really important because then you can start to acknowledge a person for who they are and what attributes they really bring to the table. And then you can hold yourself to a level of accountability by doing so. And, you know, holding yourself accountable by understanding that we are all different and unique in some way, shape, or form. Some of us like loud music, some of us like to dance. And that's not a tone of being aggressive. That is some culture aspects and part of our nationality. And that's not a crime or a threat. So we have to kind of change our thinking process into understanding the differences between conscious bias and unconscious bias, because subconsciously, the media has portrayed us in Black people, especially in different lights versus others. Next slide. All right. So like I was saying, Black is a nationality, not a color. So don't be afraid to say it. And that goes for everyone. Even if you are Black, just say Black. You don't have to say Black and people of color and Black, cut it off, move on. It's so simple. And we really have to get in the swing of just saying it's Black and it's okay to do for Black. Why is it okay? Because Black is a culture, it's not a color. We are not immigrants nor minorities. Some of us has been here on this land and this is our origin. Some of us has been here since the 1300s. So what do you do with that? That's a group that's, you know, been around for a while, but yet we've let other subgroups come in and classify us as such and treat us as such. And that narrative is changing slowly but surely. You know, if I had to think about myself, if someone says, Ashley, how would you identify yourself? Me personally, I would identify myself as a foundational Black American. Why? Because my origin is the United States. Even though I might have came from Africa long ago, I've so removed from Africa because I haven't grown up there. My greats are here. They died here fighting the same war that I'm fighting with white supremacy. So this is my birthright to exist and to be recognized as a foundational Black American and to be respected as such. And this is ways that we can hold each other accountable in this instant. And I don't know about if you guys heard about the killing over the Thanksgiving holiday. This young kid here, Ellison, he was actually killed in Ashland, Oregon, due to playing loud music by a white supremacist. And I feel like these are some of the excuses that some subgroups have within white supremacy to use that as leverage to cause harm or invoke fear. And I just challenge everyone to be really open-minded when it comes to embracing culture, because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and we can learn a lot from each other by sharing each other's differences. Next slide, please. Let's talk this out, shall we? Because this one is a doozy. This one gets me every time. And it I have this conversation with my sister. We go back and forth over this thing all the time. And it's the terminologies that we use to identify other people that are non-white. And what I tell people is, if there is not a classification for a German, a Sicilian, an Italian, a Russian, an Australian, if we can't classify all of them in one subgroup, why in the hell are we classifying everyone else into one subgroup? It makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. So I challenge everyone to stop using these terms. Just get them out of your subconscious, get them out of your vocabulary, never post it online, never use it in job descriptions, which I always see, because primarily what you're doing is identifying somebody by the color of their skin and not for the culture and nationality that they bring. It waters it down, and it doesn't allow each culture to be represented fairly. It's just like, you're just one big brown person and we're going to treat you as such. And that's inaccurate. And it could be quite offensive because, you know, if you go to places like a Mississippi or Alabama and you want to call Black folk a person of color, they can be highly offended. And Portland is a transport hub. You have people transporting in and out of here like crazy, which is why it's so much inconsistency in a lot of things, because people just up and leave and never return. So with that, you have to stay abreast with the language and just start identifying people by who they are, not what they look like. And if you're unsure, ask, hey, what's your nationality? What's your background? What would you like me to call you? Me, I say foundational Black American because this is my origin. Others may say, just call me Black. Others may say African American, but that's not up for anyone else to decide. You have to let that person give space to tell you how they would like to be identified. So we don't want to offend anyone, you know? Which brings us to our next slide, which is talking about diversity and inclusion. This is another big topic, of course. And let me just tell you, whether we like it or not, it is here to stay. It is never going away. I even hate using these terminologies because I feel like it's still classifying one subgroup as one size fit all. So we still have our work cut out for us. But just in hindsight, you know, diversity is a mixture, right? It's what makes us unique in different ways by various needs of ethnicity, culture, and how we think and value, how we, you know, establish our values. It then shapes our backgrounds and beliefs based on our experiences. Now, the tough part about diversity and inclusion is the inclusion part, because it is so hard to find a way to take every culture and to actually meet the needs. So I tell people all the time, if you focus on one at a time, it's so much easier. Give yourself credit and allow yourself to learn through the process. That way it's not so overwhelming. But finding a way to get people all together and to make it work well can be a challenge, and we understand that. But it's a conscious effort to ensure that everyone still feels valued, respected, and supported on how they contribute the work and partnerships that they provide. And another thing too is, you know, those who leverage this and really grasp the concept, they have a more positive outlook when it comes to approaching diversity versus someone who doesn't. I mean, they may struggle in their business. They may find it hard to find business. They may find it hard to work with other business owners because they don't know how to properly engage. Well, the first part of engaging is acknowledging, oh, yeah, you're different, but you don't have to say it. You could just start asking questions. Hey, listen, I'm new at this. I'm not too sure how to come about this, but I'm just wanting to gain a little understanding on, you know, how would you feel working with me? And what kind of services can I provide that might work together with your business? Instead of picking up the phone and saying, hi, are you a BIPOC? Or are you a person of color? And it's like, no, I don't understand what that really means. Instead, use your passion to display what it is that you're trying to convey. So much easier. On to the next slide. This slide, the next slide, this one is actually my favorite. And it's equality, it's equity versus equality. And do you know the difference? Because I'm gonna tell you, I didn't. It took me a little while to understand because everyone comes up with these new terms and terminologies all the time. And I've actually taken this from a company out of Canada who did a very great job at putting together the differences between equity and equality. And what they say is, you check out the picture, it's so true. It's so very true that you know, equality is making sure that every individual has an equal opportunity, right? And equity is making sure that you're giving that opportunity and making sure that those people have what they need to operate fairly in your establishment. And as you can see by the picture, how easy it is to overlook something as so minor. And I think that's how a lot of times we view things. We don't look at it out of the lens of others. We just, well, if it's comparable to me, then it can be done for everyone. Well, not necessarily. And the analogy that I really like is this. As a business owner, it's okay to provide shoes for everyone in your company, but it's even better to make sure those shoes fit each and every person, because we all wear different shoe sizes. So it's not one size fit all. You still have to find ways to accommodate folks in that aspect. Okay, next slide. So when equity and inclusion is done right, you get great results. You have a high engagement with candidates, with other business owners. And an engagement is the factor that impacts the potential of the organization. And it also increases your business performance, lowers the risk associated with the workplace, meaning it minimizes toxic work environments. A lot of us are business owners because of it. We've been inconvenienced by some sort. We've been poorly managed. We've fed up. So we decided to take our passion, leave corporate, and do things on our own. But it's just trying to make sure that you don't take those old bad habits that you were bogged down with in your prior positions. You don't want to bring that over to your new and current jobs and your businesses. You want to recreate the narrative by learning things differently. So what are some of the solutions? Next slide, Deanna. Sorry about that. What are some of the solutions when it comes to diversity and inclusion? It's a never-ending journey, something you're going to always have to change, revamp, learn. It's just what it is, because it's not going anywhere. And to be quite honest, COVID has made everything we do inconvenient, like I was saying earlier. So addressing the needs of our current reality and understanding that we are literally living in a new digital age. So give yourself credit for making it this far. And then take the initiative and start leading conversations, even if they're uncomfortable. Have conversations with your family members, your friends. Reach out and leverage support through your community. And get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's important, because once you get over the hump of being uncomfortable, then you can learn how to better be an ally. And as a Black person, then you can identify a better ally, one that won't, trample over you or use you or try to exploit you for resources. But you can also identify a great ally partnership in a healthy space, because, we all need this. And that's what happens if we work together to create change in the workplace. It allows cohesiveness. Next slide. I just wanted to share with you a few stats that I took from PwC. And this is extremely important, because I think a lot of times we don't look at, or we don't know, or we don't pay attention to the back and forth, the inconsistencies in jobs. And currently, 47% of new hires leave a job within 45 days. That's a pretty high number. That's almost 50%. And the reason for that is lack of clarity or understanding the nature of the company and the position, not setting clear expectations, and no room for culture. I mean, how many times have you got a job and you really still didn't understand what it is you're going to be doing? You're just there. Because I've been a victim of that. And then you're constantly trying to prove to someone that you deserve the position and that the pay is comparable to what, the work that you're doing. And that's a burden, because nobody want to feel like a dollar sign when they're working. You want to be able to be free and be able to produce the work that needs to be done the correct way. That way you feel good, the company is happy, and you get kudos and accolades later down the line. So I ask yourself to think about yourself when it comes to culture and hiring, and partnering with other businesses. Just think about how you would want to be approached. You know, think about those times where you felt disrespected or someone humiliated you or made you feel less than a person, because it's happened to all of us. No one is immune to that. So consider yourself. And when you consider yourself, then you can work through ways on how to better engage with others. Okay. Next slide, please. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Partners in Diversity, but they did a brilliant study on Portland and primarily Blacks, because we seemed to be, as far as the results, we were the most vocal about how the heck we felt in Portland. And I just kind of wanted to share that with you because I'm sure you hear it all the time, but yet I'm sure you're trying to figure out, well, what is it that I can do to try to make it a little bit more comfortable? Well, first you got to see what they're really saying. And what they're saying is what they're learning, and these are some of their experience, they lack diversity representation in the workforce from leadership on down. Being witness to recipients of chronic microaggressions and discrimination at work, lack of accountability, lack of support from organization, and tokenism. This is, wow, so true. And I feel this on a daily basis. And I am telling you, I am always uncomfortable, never comfortable. I'm never comfortable. So the ideology that we have to constantly make others feel comfortable with the way we speak, the way we talk, the way we wear our hair, the way we engage is challenging because, again, we're viewed as a color, not a culture. And as a matter of fact, I had someone tell me, well, you Black, girl, you don't have no culture. I'm like, what? I do have culture. You know, I have lots of culture, and you're recognizing me just for my skin color, not for what value I bring in the different things that we have. I'm like, we walk on sidewalks because Black people. We wear drawers because of Black people. We wash our asses because of Black folk, because we have soap and hygiene. That's all Black established. So that is part of my culture and heritage. And that is something not to negate or to minimize with any other culture or subgroup. It's just to clearly say that you're here solely because of my culture. That's the only reason why you're here. My culture is welcoming, it's giving, and we tend to put ourselves last on the totem pole to make sure that we compromise everybody because we want to make sure everyone here is welcome. Okay, so if you haven't checked out that study with Partners in Diversity, I highly encourage you to check it out. It's very interesting. You can learn quite a lot from that. So which brings me to my last slide. And we can create change when everyone is willing. I want you guys to take away from this a new perspective on culture and how it impacts Blacks, and taking an unconscious outlook on how to eliminate bias. And give yourself time to regroup, think things through, and learn new things. It's okay to step out the box, and it's okay to learn more about culture, and it's okay to embrace it. Because so often we embrace our own culture, but we're afraid that it's not going to be receptive. So again, that's why we always say Black but we have to get out of that. We have to just get used to just saying Black, and it is what it is. And we can start there. We can start making a lot of change once we break that narrative and once we submit to making a difference and change. So that's the whole presentation. I really hope you guys enjoyed that. Does anyone have any questions? No, no one? No questions? No life experiences?
So Ashley, thank you so much. You unpacked a lot there. And so that's why I stopped sharing, because we've got a small intimate group that I think we can have a really robust conversation and dialogue around some of the points that you made. So I think, Cassie, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashley. And this is really, really specific to my field. I run bag and baggage productions or theater company, and this summer the theater industry, um, there a self-identified group that called themselves BIPOC theater artists. So they adopted that term. They put out this document called "We See You, White American Theater," as we are a predominantly white field, right? Um, and they subsequently followed it up with a list entitled "BIPOC Demands for White American Theater." And so I'm wondering if you have advice, because I like your point is so well taken about the way that using like BIPOC or POC or minorities just like totally negates people's humanity and culture. And, completely get that. I'm wondering if you have advice for navigating this world where that term continues to be used. How can we live in that world and live within that context that has been sort of given to us, while also being super sensitive about the reality that, yeah, I don't just want to be lumping a group of people together because of the way their skin appears. And I don't know if that question makes sense. I'm just sort of trying to grapple with these two realities.
Yeah, for sure. And I know it can be confusing, but just to let you know, BIPOC is only used here. No other place in the United States use that terminology. And the reason why it's so hard is because one, people come here and they feel like, oh, well, that's the group I belong to. And what you can do is saying, you know what, I don't like it. I don't like saying BIPOC. I hate it. I'm not going to use it. So yeah, I can support the event, but I'm not using that terminology. You guys are all individual. And me, quite frankly, as a white person, I don't view you as a color. I want to value you for who you are and what your culture brings to my life. And constantly making an emphasis on even not using that terminology or participating. I'm not participating in using that language because I don't think it's fair. And like, again, a lot of people subjugate themselves to that because they want to fit in. They're finding that sense of belonging. And I understand that that's important. I understand that that is also a thing of what this economy has brought on us, with all the events that have taken place. But again, it still waters it down because when you go to those BIPOC events, you still don't know who people are. You're like, okay, yeah, there are a mixture of people, but I go to BIPOC events and I'm usually the only Black person. I'm usually the only foundational Black person. It might be an African from Nigeria, it may be someone from the Caribbean or Canada, or it could be, someone who is Puerto Rican or of Latin descent. So for me, I'm never usually the only Black person, or I'm usually only the Black person. And I don't use that terminology. I think it waters it down. And I just challenge you, and I know it's hard, but I challenge you to just say, you know what? This terminology is kind of confusing because you got to think Portland is a transport hub. People don't know what the hell BIPOC is. They just trying to find their tribe. So they go to that subgroup. And when they get there, they're like, yeah, I'm participating, but yet I don't have much of a cultural influence because I'm sharing every aspect with every other culture. So you don't get, you miss out. You completely miss out. So even though it's difficult, I still challenge you to just still acknowledge someone for the culture and value they bring. I hope I answered your question or gave you a little bit of.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that. I mean, what I'm hearing you say really, what is really coming across is like continue to focus on like the humanity of people and
Absolutely.
not on like trying to categorize people. And I think, I want to be sensitive to the artists that have created this statement that have used that language. But I think just understanding from just listening to you talk that people adopt that language because we want to belong and we want to fit in. So providing a way of having dialogue that allows us to move like beyond that to the humanity in us,
Absolutely.
is what I'm hearing. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Casey.
So I was,
I'm
I'm sorry,
sorry.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
So I was great presentation, Ashley. I just wanted to piggyback off of your slide where you talked about Blacks in the workforce, particularly in Oregon. Um, I could definitely relate to all those points that were on there from my experience. Being in Oregon, it wasn't welcoming. Um, they definitely let you know, your color, the color of your skin is an issue. So just having an experience with all of that, I can truly relate.
Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, and that's the thing too. When I'm talking to professionals in the workplace, a lot of them are really having a hard time navigating on how to fit in. And that's why, Casey, that brings back to the point about the BIPOC, because again, even though we are establishing subgroups, I worked for Daimler. I didn't have a BIPOC for a German, a Russian, a Ukrainian. I wish I did, honestly, because it would, I honestly wish I did. You know why I wish I did? Because I feel like if I had a subgroup, then it will finally show people how it diminishes culture. And then we can start seeing things differently. But it's so hard to see that when it's not you. It really is a challenge. I mean, because when I worked at Daimler, it was to the point where I was devalued because of my color. And I had to prove myself constantly over and over and over again that I was worthy to being there. And they wasn't even paying me. I was a contractor. And so to give to Taylor's experience, with her experience, and I know Taylor because that's my sister, but given her experience and talking with her in Intel, it was really a struggle for her. Her and both her husband, they don't even live here anymore. They're part of that 20% that usually leaves within the first 2 years. So that's talent that Oregon was just not able to retain because they felt forced out. And so they left because they're from the South. And again, people from the South don't equate themselves by their color. It's a culture aspect, you know? And so that gets lost when you're into a corporation or a company and there's no place for you at all. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Taylor. Is there any more questions? I know
Is it Natalie?
Yes.
Natalie, yes.
Yeah, I'm actually originally from Oregon, but then spent half my time in the South. So yeah, I get it with the the culture. And yeah, one of my friends posted on Facebook in Atlanta, my classmate. He's like, I don't use the word BIPOC. He goes, I'm blackity black, black, black. That's just what he gonna call me. But I appreciate the statistics you put up in partners in diversity, and I actually want to use that information. I'm part of a major women's civic organization. I don't want to say because it's we're recording, and something just actually happened this week, where we a young talented Black woman was going to be placed on the executive board. And then a mistake happened, and then there was a phone call. Well, we can't allow you to have this position. And then she basically said, well, as a Black woman, I'm used to having stuff taken away from me. And that was a shocker to some of the white females in the group. So that statistic about how Black people feel in Portland, I want to use that information to the president of our local chapter to just drive that point home about how overall we feel we're having a major culture shift within this organization in Portland, whereas in other places across the country, it's more, the chapters are more diverse. And here we are struggling with the diversity, even on a socioeconomic level. We hardly have any single mothers in the group. Most people in this group make six figures. So yeah, I appreciate that. That was because I'm still been trying to formulate an email while not being completely emotional and bombastic.
Yeah, you know, and it's real. You got to give yourself time to, like I said, you got to give yourself some time to process the things that are happening. Us as Black people, we're very reactionary and emotional. So when it comes to trauma, we have a tendency on acting out with the trauma instead of taking a deep breath and learning how to figure out, navigate ways to a better solution. And knowing that change in the world is not going to be at the palm of just your hands. So you have to take it literally in strides and give yourself credit for making it this far.
Thank you.
Ashley, I had just a comment. The part that I thought was the most interesting was the microaggression for, and I'm reading a book right now, and part of the talk about it is communication and what nonverbal communication, like what you put off, maybe what you're saying in your head is not the message that the person from the other side is receiving. So, you know, I could be saying something in a situation like that to somebody that means to me has zero meaning of anything racial or prejudice or anything like that, but the person that's receiving it might be taking it that way. And the comment about just asking somebody, how do you want to be called? What do you want to be identified? Makes complete sense. I mean, I think there's also a fear of, if I said to you, Ashley, what should I call you? Should I call you BIPOC? Should I call you Black? Should I call you Ashley? I think there's a fear too that someone might react back to that, like it's a prejudice statement of asking that in the first place. But I think that kind of also goes to your point of get used to being uncomfortable. I mean, I think if you lead with, hey, I'm not trying to, this isn't to come across as I'm trying to differentiate us. It's just, I want to be, how do I ask you, or how do I talk to you to make you feel comfortable and make me not feel awkward asking? So.
Absolutely, Brad. You know, and quite frankly, today now we put he, them, they, she, hers on our email, right? You know, we ask how you want to be classified as a person. And you know, we don't, I find that that's a lot easier to ask than to just say, you know, this is how I lead it. I'll tell you this. When I talk to someone, I'm like, hey, you have a slight accent. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from such and such. Oh, well, where are your parents from? Where they live? Oh, such and such. It's just a way of being hospitable and gaining information that you don't have. But that's the recruiter in me. I'm so an extrovert. I love to get to know people, and I try to get all up in your business. Ask Deanna. But in hindsight, Brad, to make this full circle, you know, if you're uncomfortable in saying, well, what would you like to be called? Just, you know, hey, listen, I think I hear an accent. You from Oregon? What part? Where are your parents from? That will tell you a lot about someone. Because if I ask you, Brad, where are your grandparents from, Brad? What's their nationality? You may say, I don't know, white, or you may say, you know, they're Italian or Irish. And wow, so you're of Irish descent. Do you celebrate any Irish holidays? Do you do anything in commemoration to your, you know, your late ancestors? What do you do to honor them? Oh, such and such. You learn so much by just diving deep, because I'm telling you, Black people, we've never lived comfortable. My great grandmother died uncomfortable. And part of that is she was stripping of her tribal heritage. You know, she's Cherokee, but she died Black because that was taken from her. And so we've always been uncomfortable. So even if you offend someone, dust it off, move on, learn from that experience and try again. Don't give up. Keep trying until you get it right. And I guarantee you it'll come.
To piggyback with what you were saying, I did that yesterday at work. I've been kind of curious what this one person's ethnic background was. I go, do you mind if I ask what your ethnicity is? I said, can I guess? And she goes, yeah. So I was like, okay, not Filipino. I said, you're not Polynesian. So I said, Guam. And then they kept kind of going, she's like, you're close. And then she finally told me where. And I was like, well, I never would have guessed that. She's from Saipan. And then she started telling me the family was still there. Like half the family was here in the States. And we were talking about the plane ticket and how much it cost. But yeah, I kept looking at her last name. I actually thought she was Samoan. So I kept looking and I had guessed that. And she said, no.
Yep. You see, Brad, we make mistakes too.
Yeah.
But we're always uncomfortable. So that's not something that we feel bad about. It's like, okay. Okay. I mean, oh, my bad. I'm sorry. Ugh. I apologize. Let me recorrect myself, and then you move on. Don't beat yourself up about this issue. What you're doing and what you're doing now, learning more, gaining understanding, and learning how to be uncomfortable. You're already uncomfortable anyways. You're a prisoner in your own home, thanks to COVID, right? So you've already been uncomfortable. You've already learned the art of being patient. And now we don't live in a rush and go society anymore. I don't think we're ever going back to that, honestly. With a vaccine or with not, I don't think we'll ever get back to the rushing and the hustle and bustle. Because prior to now we're going into 2021, we're going to have to get more uncomfortable with being uncomfortable.
So Ashley, help me out here. With, I'm a native Oregonian, you know that. And, for forever, we like boxes. And so the BIPOC box, right, was something that was created because, that's okay. We feel good about that. Break our arm, patting ourselves on the back. And that's used a lot. I mean, as you know, it's used a lot with people out of a genuine spirit of, conveying, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's something that, as I've learned from you and, feel more comfortable that not using that term, but there's so many people that use it that I interact with, and I feel uncomfortable, and which I should feel uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable about as a white girl telling somebody, they don't want to be called that. And I think they would look at me and say, well, how the hell do you know? And so how do I help be an ally for you in that terminology and in that identification that is really so limiting to you and your culture, and is really only shorthand for us, right? We're using it as shorthand, and we're not understanding the impact and the lack of opportunity we have to learn.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, the thing that I would do is constantly say, I am here at a BIPOC event, but I don't practice lumping everyone up into one big person. I acknowledge and I cherish every culture for what they bring to the table. That's why in our establishment, we do things differently. We allow you to exist as an individual, and we bear with us while we navigate on how to include all cultures, but we're doing it at a space where we're learning one culture at a time, because it's hard. If you use a BIPOC, you don't get the emphasis of learning about each culture, and you don't know who's who. You're just like, it's a BIPOC. And it's unfortunate because, again, people are seeking community. So they're flocking to that terminology, just like the terminology minority. We're not minoritized. Minoritizing people who have been here since prior 1300s is insane. I can never go to Mexico and say, hey, Mexicans, y'all minorities and I'm a real Mexican. It looks and it's crazy, right? And that's how white people look today in society. They have said, hey, Black folk, we're taking everything from your tribal leadership to your culture and heritage, and we're just going to make up whatever the hell we want to call you. And that's unfair. And so what I challenge you to do is, yes, it's uncomfortable, but you can attend those events. You don't have to not go. You could just be like, hey, listen, I'm here, but I acknowledge all people for not the color, but for the value they bring in their nationality and culture. And in my organization, we pride ourselves on actually identifying each culture and allowing each culture to exist as their own, so that we can create an inclusive and a collaborative work environment that we all can strive and survive and work together. I hope I
So-
answered the question.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, I'm just so glad that we're recording this, because these are the kind of, we need to go back and listen to you continually to continue to understand. And I think to help, those of us that are in, positions where we're interacting with people that are using that terminology, to utilize the gift that you shared with us, about, what that feels like, that we're put in a position where we feel more empowered to be able to help, and say, we're not using that terminology anymore. And I was thinking, when you were identifying your culture as, a foundational Black American, I was like, I wonder how long it's going to take Portland before they turn that into an acronym, right?
Right.
Right?
Oh,
I
God.
mean, I'm like, right? And I think that's what I don't know if it's that we're in a hurry or we're lazy or a combination of both, right? But it's like, it's what, 3 words, for God's sakes, and we're going to turn it into 3 letters, and it takes away the entire identity, right? It does. And so I think if we can develop strength about pushing back to people and saying, we're not going to put this in it, we're not going to abbreviate that. The words have meaning.
Yes.
And by turning them into letters, you are losing the meaning. And that's not appropriate.
Absolutely. You're spot on, Deanna. I think that's really the next wave, is really changing the new narrative in how we approach racial issues and how we include properly, because inclusion is the hard part. And these are just learning curves that we're all learning and trying to navigate and trying to find our space to coexist so that we're accepted. And I think that when more white people start to accepting Black as Black, then other cultures can then just define themselves as being who they are and freely to be able to exist without being lumped together, because lumping us together is safe. It's safe. It's just safer to do so because we're not as threatening. And we become very threatening when, we're by ourselves or we're alone. I actually had someone tell me, I'm afraid of Black men. And I said, well, why? Oh, they just, I'm just afraid. And I said, well, listen, that's propaganda and media has you afraid. I said, because if you look at history, Black people, we commit more crimes within ourselves than we do with anyone else. And that goes for every other culture too. But the premise is that Black people are violent, hypersexual, and aggressive. And the ideology that comes from slavery. Prior to that, we had an origin. And that origin lacked respect because we were demonized as slaves. And I'm not trying to demonize slavery, because that is an event that happened to some of us. And it has caused these effects. Hence why they call corporate the plantation, right? It's because, we still practice some sort of slavery in the mindset because it's subconscious. And so now we're learning how to be uncomfortable with having these difficult conversations and really finding ways to express ourselves individually, because this is part of inclusion. We have to learn how to just say Black, leave it alone, that's it. We don't have to say Black and this and that and other. No, it's okay to just say Black. This is just a Black thing. And that's okay. It's non-threatening, because ideally in America, the history that we've had is lynching. We're still being lynched. There was a lynching a week ago. And it was done by a white person. So if you were to say who is more to be feared, it's white men, or more to be feared, and white women who push forward that aggression towards their white men offspring. So in ideology, if we're really looking at history, it is the barbaricism of white people who causes this ideology of fake fear that is in the air involving around Black men. And that's why in my business, I go so hard for Black people, predominantly and particularly Black males, because they are not allowed to express themselves or just be in their natural habitat without someone feeling threatened by them. And so I challenge you guys to just take a deep breath and know that it's going to be okay. No one is coming after you with the machete. And that is definitely okay to start saying things as Black and foundational Black Americans, and understanding that origin because it was stolen from us. And we're not an immigrant group. And I had to get that ideology out of my head because I felt like I was an immigrant all this time. And in talking with my grandparents, my great grandmother, she would say all the time how the Indians would come over to do rituals and the tribal chiefs would come over. And see, that's stuff in our culture that you guys aren't privy to hearing or knowing because history is only taught one way. So learning this type of stuff is really how we're going to start navigating forward.
I
Ashley,
have a
that's so-
question too, if there's time.
Sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way, for putting this together. This has been excellent. I think you've already answered this to a certain extent, but maybe asking it again can maybe get some further details. But a lot of the terminology, like I'll hear something like the BIPOC phrase and I think the assumption which probably stems from privilege, assuming that the term for BIPOC came from BIPOC people and they chose it themselves and that's how they want it, and finding out later that no, actually that probably was a comfort term that as a white culture we assigned to them, so that there's once again there's us white folk and then there's other, and we've got a new term for other. So I feel like you have answered that very well today in terms of just the sniff test of like, if it's a broad stroke term for other, it probably doesn't pass the test. And so don't adopt it. But aside from Googling, the origin of a word, how do we maybe check out that, like, what's the vet test? How do you evaluate a phrase that is new to you? That may, especially with something like BIPOC, where it's not meant to apply to me. And so how do I figure out where it came from, whether it's appropriate to use without accidentally offending somebody and thinking that this is the new term and this is what I'm supposed to say, and then find out that it's, an offensive phrase, aside from maybe, some of the stuff we've learned today, or just kind of trying to Google the word or Google the acronym. What's a way to evaluate that helps me not use a phrase I shouldn't use?
That's a really great point. Really what you can do is, the thing too, I'll tell you this, when you Google BIPOC, it's just redundancy. And that too will let you know that that phrase is just some made up BS. And again, for us as Black people, this has happened to us prior to colonization. If they classified us by our skin color and it lumped all of our tribes together as Native Americans, as indigenous folks, and we've lost our culture. And we're doing it again with this terminology. And again, being in a predominantly white environment, people just want to find folk that actually look like them, but they realize, oh, wait, we look similar, but we're not similar. We have totally different cultures. I've attended BIPOC events, but I don't identify as a BIPOC. In fact, what I say is, I challenge you all to just say what this event really is. Why do you have to feel the need to classify it as a BIPOC? And that terminology is so confusing. And I will tell you, I know we almost pressed for time. I will tell you that I've worked with a few managers and they just conformed to the ideology just because everyone of other descent was using that word. And they're like, I didn't even know it was offensive because they're just using it all the time. And I'm like, well, how does it make you feel? Well, I don't like it. Well, you need to convey that. You need to convey that. And so often what we do is we have not properly conveyed what it is that we're not comfortable. We are uncomfortable saying what we are. And white society has made it that way. It's easier to come at you and to be more approachable if we water our culture down and include everyone so that it's just easier. And to navigate from that, we're going to have to really start to do our best with just saying, hey, it's a BIPOC event, but are there any Blacks here? Any Blacks who, from Oregon? And it's okay. And again, yeah, you might offend somebody. I offend people on the regular, but I'm okay and I'm still here because you have to learn. You have to learn, you have to navigate. And not doing and not saying, I don't want to be offensive is not an excuse to not do. Now you have the information, you know that terminology is not really accepted. And other transplants who come here, they don't use that term. They identify themselves by who they are, not the color. And BIPOC, it only shows color. It doesn't allow you to really get the experience of what the culture has to bring.
Ashley, thank you so much. The richness that we can find by the exploration of people and individuals is really what I heard in your message today is we're missing the complete richness of individual experiences, their culture, their background, the gifts that they have, and that their family, has passed on to them by not exploring each individual for that background. And so what a great opportunity for us to have it come from a standpoint of seeking richness and sharing and learning. And I will tell you, everyone that's on the call, that Ashley is absolutely true to her spirit in the fact that I've had many conversations with her. And there are times when she's like, well, that sounds like tokenism, Deanna. And I'm like, well, crap, that's not what I wanted. But we have these conversations and she helps me. And she's very, very generous in helping guide and helping us learn so that and to me that creates a really trusting environment in that she still answers the phone when I call, and I know that I've said things that weren't right, and that so don't be afraid to grow, because that will really reduce and diminish your ability to experience that richness. So what a great lesson today, Ashley. This, I think, is a conversation that is just beginning. And with your grace and blessings, we would hope to continue this conversation with you, because I don't think a 60-minute time frame is going to solve this issue and help us grow. So my hope is that you'll come back and we can engage again on a different topic, but explore this. And also, as we go out into our daily lives and practice the work that you've taught us today, that there'll be questions, and we'll have struggles and challenges, and to come back and be able to dialogue that together, I think would be really important.
Absolutely. And please feel free to reach out. You can call me if you're feeling like you're needing a little assistance or guidance. I try to make myself relatively available, so don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you guys so much for coming and joining in on this lesson. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you everyone for participating. We will be this has been recorded, so it will be online probably later today. So if you know of some folks that would be interested and could benefit from hearing this conversation, please be sure to share it with them. So Ashley, thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.